Habayim, welcome. Shalom, I am Rabbi Helene Ainbinder, Beit Chaverim Jewish Community of Greater Zion and President of the St. George Interfaith Council. I would like to first thank the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for hosting us in the historic St. George Tabernacle. Elder Evan Schmutz will be presiding at tonight's Freedom Fireside, hosted by the St. George Interfaith Council. I am honored and privileged to be representing the St. George Interfaith Council's membership of 30 diverse faiths that serve the communities of Washington County, and I'm most honored to be delivering the invocation for Governor-elect Spencer Cox. The St. George Interfaith Council's vision and mission is to increase cooperation and understanding across the community while respecting the integrity of each person's beliefs. Our members devote themselves to helping this community in various ways, such as delivering prayers for the prayer over the city on New Year's Day and the National Day of Prayer, the St. George City Council, and the Washington County Commissioners. Our members participate in events such as the Crop Walk, where funds raised go to feed people not only in Utah but worldwide. We participate in the Stations of the Cross and the Family Roots Expo, and we even have a wonderfully talented interfaith choir. We have just come through a year of unprecedented challenges, a year of the coronavirus, a horrific year not only for the leaders, but for every person on this planet. The Jewish people just celebrated Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, and we were reminded of another horrific time, a time when the Jewish people sought to overcome the dark days of oppression, and we defeated our enemy, the Greeks, to obtain our religious freedom and ways of life. This year, the enemy is a virus, and as we strive to be brave, sane, socially distant, and wearing masks, we pray that the light from the candles illuminated during Hanukkah will brighten and warm the hearts of all people, people who are isolated and alone, those that are sick and their families, frontline people, medical personnel, the armed forces, the police and fire personnel, our clergy, people who lost their business and other people that lost their jobs, and many other individuals that keep us healthy and safe during these dark times. Just as a community is a living and growing place wherein each member is a part of the whole, we rely on each other for advice and counsel. Today, we need the diversity of a community to help us along this path. This diversity, the joining of people, is one of the greatest accomplishments of humanity. Everyone has a neshama, a soul, which speaks out and contributes to making the stability and wellness of the community. The community itself is greater than any single individual because the community supports all people. As a community, we strive to become role models, transmitting the concepts of light and integrity. We address ourselves to such issues as social action, community service, and much more. This is the essence of leadership. Governor-elect Spencer Cox, you will be inaugurated tomorrow. The Jewish people have not just 10 commandments, we have 613 commandments. These are just 2 commandments and blessings for you and your administration as you begin these leadership roles. The first is a Shehekianu, a blessing to celebrate this occasion. I will recite the prayer in Hebrew, followed by its translation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehekianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this moment in time. The second prayer is for the new governor and his administration. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, accept with mercy our prayer for our land and its government. Pour out your blessings on its governor, lieutenant governor, judges, officers, and officials who work faithfully for the public good. Let us all pray. Teach them, Lord, the laws of your Torah. Lord our God, bless our land and all its inhabitants, and prosper us in all our undertakings. Remind us to condemn the acts of anti-Semitism, bigotry, bias, racial and religious discrimination, and hateful thinking of any kind. Lord our God, we seek your guidance to help our leaders govern wisely, bringing them emotional stability, mental clarity, and physical endurance to do their work. Please bestow upon them your common grace and strength to effectively carry out their responsibilities to preserve peace and tranquility in the great state of Utah. Please empower us as citizens to give them the respect due to their office and allow them to wisely enact laws and regulations that foster an environment where every citizen can flourish spiritually, socially, physically, and peacefully. And let us say, Amen. We will now hear a musical number from Juan Felipe Cabarla, St. George Catholic Church, performing La Barca en la Playa, the boat on the beach.
La barca en la playa, los remos al sol, Jesús proclamaba el reino de Dios. Y en la arena, en la arena, en la arena ya estaba yo. Y en la arena, en la arena, en la arena el Señor me llamó. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, lleva en mi barca el timón. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, soy mensajero de amor. Sentí su mirada, me habló al corazón. Jesús, me decías, serás pescador de los hombres, de los hombres, de los hombres serás servidor, de los hombres, misionero, misionero del reino de Dios. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, lleva en mi barca el timón. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, soy mensajero de amor. Remé mar adentro, remamos los dos, por meta los cielos, por viento el amor. Y en lo alto, en lo alto, en lo alto la Madre de Dios. Y en lo alto, en lo alto, en lo alto la Madre de Dios. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, lleva en mi barca el timón. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, soy mensajero de amor. El viento en contra, el sol se ocultó, Llegó la tormenta, la noche llegó. Y en la barca, en la barca, en la barca remaba el Señor. Y en la barca, en la barca, en la barca remaba mi amor. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, lleva en mi barca el timón. Él me llamó, Él me eligió, soy mensajero de amor.
That was beautiful. Muy bueno. I'm now going to be introducing the speakers. And then the last one will be a video. We will not be able to see it. The people at home will be seeing it. The first I'm introducing is Elder Evan A. Schmutz, General Authority of the 70 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay. Currently serving as First Chancellor in the Utah Area Presidency with concurrent assignments in the Communication and Correlation Departments. Evan Anton Schmutz was born in St. George, Utah on June 6, 1954, the son of Richard Anton Schmutz and Miriam Christensen Schmutz. He married Cindy Lee Simmons in 1978. Elder and Sister Schmutz are the parents of 5 children and they enjoy their role as grandparents. Next will be Lieutenant Governor-elect Deidre Henderson, was elected as Utah's 9th Lieutenant Governor in October 2020 after serving in the United States Senate, the Utah State Senate, since 2013. Lieutenant Governor Henderson and her husband Gabe have been married for 27 years and are the proud parents of 5 children. They have resided in Spanish Fort for the last 22 years. Governor-elect Spencer J. Cox was born and raised in Fairview, Utah. In Fairview, Governor Cox served as a city councilman, mayor, county commissioner, and state legislator before being appointed to serve as Utah's lieutenant governor in 2013. Governor Cox and wife Abby are proud parents of 4 children. He and his family enjoy spending time in Utah's amazing backcountry. He also plays the bass guitar with his brother in a local rock band.
Thank you, Rabbi Ainbinder, for your welcoming remarks and your beautiful opening prayer. We've been inspired by that prayer and by the musical talent of Juan Felipe Carbajal. You have a beautiful voice. Thank you so much. Good evening to all who are gathered here in your homes, and to those that are gathered here in the historic St. George Tabernacle. This building has a special place in the hearts of my family. I have forebears that were part of this community in the very beginning. I'm grateful to participate in this Freedom Fireside and grateful to share this evening with Governor-elect Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor-elect Deidre Henderson and retired Judge Thomas Griffith, whom you'll hear from in the rest of the program. I come by assignment from the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and bring to you their greeting and love. It is a special privilege to gather with an interfaith community of spiritual leaders and devoted souls. How grateful we are for the talents, wisdom, leadership, and tireless contributions of so many in our state who give themselves in service to others and to the public good. How grateful we are for the many among us in every faith tradition who daily turn to God for direction in their lives as they seek to emulate the divinely given characteristics of faith, hope, and charity. We have survived another general election and a statewide election. As Utahns, we have cause for gratitude. We had honorable candidates from both major parties offer themselves in service to the state. We are confident that Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor Henderson will continue to lead the affairs of state with honesty, integrity, sincere concern for the welfare of every citizen and resident, and with the same high resolve with which our previous executives have served. This election, especially on the national front, like many which preceded it, was marked by strong differences of opinion and some incendiary rhetoric. I express the admiration of Utahns for the decision made by Governor-elect Cox and his Democratic challenger, Chris Peterson, to make a united plea for civility and peaceful transfer of power. Their joint campaign message was, for me, a high point in the season. This campaign season has caused many to ponder how we might change the tenor and trajectory of our political discourse. Patriotism, in its true sense, is not the proprietary province of any one party. The word simply means love for or devotion to one's own country. I believe we will find wisdom as we refrain from equating an opposing point of view on political issues with an absence of patriotism. Vitriolic rhetoric when expressing differing political philosophies is not new to this country, and it certainly need not govern nor impede the forward progress of our national affairs. In the earliest days of our nation's founding, put politely, politics was tumultuous. As one historian described it, quote, the politics of the 1790s was truly a cacophonous affair. In terms of shrill, accusatory rhetoric, flamboyant displays of ideological intransigence, intense personal rivalries, and hyperbolic claims of imminent catastrophe, it has no equal in American history. The political dialogue within the highest echelon of the revolutionary generation was a decade-long shouting match, end quote. Does that sound familiar? How then did they do it? How did the luminaries of political dialogue and thought in the first decade of our nation's history manage to create from such verbal hostilities and seemingly irreconcilable political philosophies the foundation for a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, one that would pass the test proposed by Abraham Lincoln to see whether such a nation, so conceived, can long endure? How is it that from such discord among political leaders, we the people have inherited the wealth of purpose, opportunity, and potential that this nation and its constitutional framework has provided? We are a nation dedicated to the self-evident truth that all people are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There may have been many other factors that contributed to the successful establishment of this nation in such discordant circumstances, including divine design. But I would like to focus on one reason postulated by an esteemed historian. The Founding Fathers, he said, quote, all knew each other personally, meaning they broke bread together, sat together at countless meetings, corresponded with one another about private as well as public matters. Politics remained a face-to-face affair in which the contestants were forced to negotiate the emotional affinities of shared intimacy produced by frequent personal interaction, end quote. Consider then the happy consequences that resulted from such personal interaction and familiarity among our founding fathers. It begat trust among political adversaries, which led to honest compromise and reflected the wisdom of checks and balances inherent in our constitutional system. Such should it be in our day. If we and our political representatives would make more time for breaking bread together, listening to and learning from one another, we would perhaps discover that fair and genuinely held opinions on matters of theory and policy can be debated by and between friends, resulting similarly in the fruits of trust and beneficial compromise. President Dallin H. Oaks recently spoke of this as a broader principle of human interaction when he said, quote, "Anger is the way to division and enmity. We move toward loving our adversaries when we avoid anger and hostility toward those with whom we disagree. It also helps if we are willing to learn from them. When we are trying to understand and relate to people of a different culture, we should try getting to know them," end quote. Too often, we identify one another exclusively by party affiliation, or try to evaluate the whole of a person by applying a single issue litmus test. Or in social and cultural matters, we sometimes consider the quality of the person through the limiting lens of pre-existing prejudice. When this is our course, we tend to judge one another based on an incomplete and misleading caricature of the person rather than on the person's true character. Let us follow President Oaks' counsel and try getting to know each other. The need to look beyond outward characteristics and see the internal and eternal essence of a person extends well beyond the political realm. We do to each other and to ourselves a grave disservice when we choose how we will interact with other people based on racial characteristics, national origin, religious affiliation or lack thereof, gender, disability, sexual orientation, or any other differing feature of a person that has been used as a basis for discrimination. The president of our church, Russell M. Nelson, recently spoke in clear and unambiguous terms when he said, quote, "Each of us has a divine potential because each is a child of God. Each is equal in his eyes. The implications of this truth are profound. God does not love one race more than another," end quote. With ears to hear, then, we can appreciate the broader implications of President Nelson's remarks. There is no room in the household of faith to treat with discrimination or disparity any person based on physical or cultural characteristics, educational attainments, or economic status, the political party with whom they affiliate, or the God to whom they may pray. The Apostle Paul affirmed that God has made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth. For in him we live and move and have our being, for we are also his offspring. Indeed, the holy writings of most religious traditions echo the same truth. When we see one another as brothers and sisters, children of a loving God, our dispositions change at a deep level. We have concern for one another's welfare. We seek to lift and extend opportunity for advancement. We work for the common good and to strengthen the beautiful fabric of our national tapestry. As people of faith, then, we would do well to reflect on how essential to our society is a strong religious component. It will enhance the welfare and progress of all other components of society. In a nation where the protection of religious freedom is constitutionally ensured, other rights and freedoms are also enhanced. The encouragement of religious leaders mobilizes people of faith to works of charity and humanitarian assistance. Active worship causes us to see one another as children of God and fellow travelers in mortality. Not only does this lift the lives of the needy and the downtrodden in our communities, but it binds different congregations of faith through shared values and a common desire to do the work of God. When the citizens and peoples of this great nation faithfully represent their religious convictions, hope and vision will increase. Thus, patriotism in this nation by people of faith is best shown when we truly live our religion. God smiles on us when we serve his children. For said Jesus Christ, inasmuch as ye have done it to the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. A prophet of the Book of Mormon echoed the words of the Master, saying, when ye are in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. Thank you for your goodness. That we may become united in our patriotism and our service to God is my prayer. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Elder Schmutz, for your inspiring words. They have motivated me to do better. A new year and a new administration is a time for new beginnings. Although we've recently faced many challenges, collectively and individually, we have a lot to be grateful for and optimistic about. The powerful influence of our faith community in the lives of everyday Utahns makes us resilient. It gives us courage to overcome difficulties and reminds us of our duty to love and serve each other. Truly, these are reasons to hope. Governor-elect Cox and I have a lofty objective for Utah. We are both committed to the idea that Utah has been and should continue to be a beacon to the world for how the American system works best. This is a high bar. Even today, despite occasional stumbles on our march toward a more perfect union, America continues to be the most successful experiment in governance in the history of humankind, even if at times we're tempted to agree with Winston Churchill's assertion that due to all of its messiness, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. But the American system is exceptional because it's tied together at its core by truths we hold as self-evident and even sacred, that all people are created equal, that we're endowed by God with inalienable rights, and that government is formed to secure these rights, deriving its power solely from the consent of we the people. From the very beginning, our system's success has been inextricably tied to the basic goodness of our people. In 1798, John Adams said, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, or revenge, and a whole host of other vices would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Recently, I read a book by Arthur Brooks called "Love Your Enemies: How Decent People Can Save America from the Culture of Contempt." In the book, Brooks recounts a conversation he had with the Dalai Lama in which he asked His Holiness how to overcome feelings of contempt. The answer the Dalai Lama gave was simple but powerful. He said, "When you feel contempt, practice warm-heartedness." We hear a lot today about the need for more civility, and it's true, we do need more of that. But as Brooks points out, the answer to the contempt that is dividing and threatening to destroy our country is not more civility. It's more warm-heartedness. In short, the only way to save our country is not through merely practicing civil discourse, but by each one of us individually answering the call to love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. This is not a call we can impose on others. Rather, this is a commitment we must make to ourselves, that we won't worry about how other people behave. Instead, we'll focus on our own hearts, our own reactions, and our own behaviors. During the 4 times I've run a campaign for political office, it's been important for me to stay above the fray and not allow the dirtiness of politics to make me a worse person. My goal has always been to be a better person at the end of my public service than I was at the beginning of it. Now, I don't know if I'm going to make that goal, but I am trying. When politics turn ugly, one of the things that I've done to combat the negative feelings that tend to arise in me during those times is to pray for my political opponents. I've done this time and time again, and it never fails to expand my empathy, my understanding, and even my love for the people who may not be very kind or fair towards me. After years of service in the state Senate, and now as I prepare to become Lieutenant Governor, I'm convinced that Utah's destiny has less to do with the work done in the state capitol than the work done inside our homes and what's found within our individual hearts. The true measure of greatness for our state is not the fact that we balance the budget every year, or have a flourishing economy, or provide excellent education for our students, although all of those things are important. The true measure of greatness of Utah is the proportion of good works and warm-heartedness demonstrated by the people of our state, our willingness to obey unenforceable, self-imposed moral codes. I've seen so much good in the large and small acts of service during times of trial in our state. 2 years ago, South Utah County experienced wildfires that threatened homes and forced 2 cities to evacuate their residents. The Red Cross showed up to help, but the thousands of displaced families were instead welcomed into the homes of friends, family members, and even strangers in the surrounding communities. During the 10-day-long evacuation, food, clothing, diapers, and other necessities were donated by individuals and local businesses. This was not surprising. Utahns are exceptional at pulling together when it's needed. We know how to love our neighbors. We demonstrate it time and time again. We even lead the nation in volunteerism and charitable donations per capita. But could we be better at loving our enemies? I worry about the increasingly toxic trend in the way we treat people who have different views than us. I worry about the corrosive effects of the political industrial complex, pundits and politicians who keep us in a state of perpetual outrage, arguing with scorn and contempt. In light of today's challenges, it's not enough to simply love God, ourselves, and our neighbors, important as all of those are. We must go beyond that to love those who we see as opponents. My sincere request for all of us in Utah's faith community, leaders and practitioners alike, is that in this new year we fully rededicate ourselves to the simple and yet somehow radical idea to love our enemies and to defeat feelings of contempt by practicing warm-heartedness. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that it is love that will save our world and our civilization, love even for our enemies. I have faith in the divine, and I have faith in the good people of this state. We can rise up as one Utah to cultivate within ourselves the pure love of God. If we do, not even politics will be able to diminish Utah's greatness. As President George W. Bush once said, "This is the vision of America's founders. They never saw our nation's greatness in rising wealth or in advancing armies, but in small, unnumbered acts of caring and courage and self-denial. Their highest hope was to occupy the land with character." As we strive to implement our objective of Utah being a shining light on the hill and a beacon to the world, we desperately need the prayers of our faith-based communities across the state. We look to you to help us understand the needs of the flocks you shepherd, the difficulties they face, and the good they are doing. May God pour his blessings out on each of you and on our great state as we practice warm-heartedness and better learn to truly love our enemies, our friends, and our God. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special Freedom Fireside. We're so honored tonight to have a special guest appearing with us remotely, as we're so used to these days, appearing from the outskirts of Washington, D.C. It's my honor to introduce Judge Thomas Griffith, who served on the Washington, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals from 2005 until his retirement last September. A graduate of Brigham Young University and the University of Virginia School of Law, Judge Griffith was a litigation partner at the D.C. firm Wiley, Rain, and Fielding before his appointment as legal counsel for the U.S. Senate. He then served as general counsel for BYU before his appointment to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. He is currently a senior advisor at the National Institute for Civil Discourse, and his most recent writings on civic charity appeared this year in the Harvard Law Review and the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy. Judge Griffith, thank you so much for joining me this evening. We're honored to have you.
Thank you, Governor-elect Cox. It's an honor to be here.
Well, Judge, let's start here. I've read a little bit of your background, but this is a non-denominational service. We've had a day filled with faith as we've been able to visit many different faiths here in the greater St. George and Washington County area. I wondered if you would just share a little bit of your background, your faith journey, and how your life has been impacted by your own faith and the faith of others.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to do that, and I congratulate you for including faith in your inaugural ceremonies. That's a long tradition amongst presidents in the United States of America, and I'm glad to see it carried on in the state of Utah. I'm a native Washingtonian. My mother's family settled in this area in the 18th century. My father's family settled here in the early 19th century. And I was raised as an Episcopalian, as part of the worldwide Anglican communion, and had a great experience growing up in that faith tradition. I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a convert to the church as a junior in high school in McLean, Virginia, and because I'm a convert, because I draw upon two faith traditions. It's been easy for me to adopt or try to adopt an attitude that Krister Stendahl, the former dean of the Harvard Divinity School and bishop of the Church of Sweden in Stockholm, would call holy envy. The idea that we ought to be looking at each other's faith traditions for the best elements that are there. I'm an active and devout Latter-day Saint who draws heavily on the faith traditions of other Christian denominations, of Judaism, Islam, and all the great the Abrahamic religions and Eastern religions as well. So I'm fortunate to have been raised in the United States of America, where we value diversity of faith traditions, and where we look to people of faith to take an active place in the public square, along with those who are secular and don't ascribe to a faith tradition. The diversity is what makes the United States, I think, the great country that it is.
Well, thank you, Judge. And you've written a lot about that diversity, and of course, having an opportunity to sit on what most refer to as the second highest court in the land, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. You've certainly had some amazing experiences, but I have to admit, the first time that I came to really know who you were, I remember as you were going through the confirmation hearings, and George W. Bush was the president who nominated you. But it really was a speech that you gave at BYU that drew my attention. You talked about, in fact, the title of the speech, if I remember right, was "The Hard Work of Understanding the Constitution." And let's maybe just start there. This concept that we do talk a lot about the Constitution, and you refer to that as a good thing, that we do. It is in the public discourse much more maybe now than it used to be. But you talk about how it's really hard work, and I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit before we dive into something that you wrote a little more recently.
Sure, I'd be glad to. No, it is hard work to understand the Constitution. I mean, first of all, well, it depends on what you want to do with the Constitution. If your view of the Constitution, which is not a view that I share, if your view of the Constitution is that it's a living document that changes with each generation and simply reflects the current views of the elite, well, actually, it's not too hard work to read the Constitution. You just sort of put your own values right in there, and there you have the answer. I reject that view of the Constitution and the view of what the role of a judge is. And so, in my mind, it is hard work because you're dealing with a document, much of which was written 200 years ago, different language and different nuances with language, different historic events that trigger different values that are expressed in the Constitution. That's all hard work. That takes a lot of excavation. That takes close reading. Most of us aren't accustomed to close reading, to slow reading, to try to figure out what each word meant, and not just what we think it means, but what it meant to the public that ratified the Constitution. That's all very, very hard work, but I think it's the work that's required of citizenry. I mean, the whole idea behind a Constitution is that we are creating a structure of government, and certain values are being expressed in the document that we, the people of the United States, ratified and agreed that this would be the charter by which we live. To try and figure out what that meant to the people who created it is hard work. It's hard work. I agree with you. I applaud the fact that the Constitution is invoked so freely in our public discourse. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. The cautionary note I was trying to sound in that talk was that it may be a little bit harder work than you think. And I gave some examples that have to do, what does the Commerce Clause mean? How does that affect the Affordable Care Act? If you think that the debate in the Supreme Court was whether Obamacare was a good idea or a bad idea, you're missing the point. That's not what the debate was. The debate was, what is the power of Congress to regulate this segment of the economy? That's a different question, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, and so forth with other examples. The most explosive, pardon the pun, example is the Second Amendment, right? We have vigorous debates in the United States about the meaning of the Second Amendment. I was involved in the case that ended up being the Heller case, which determined that the Second Amendment includes a personal right to defend oneself with firearm in their home. That's a close call. That's a tough issue. We spent a lot of time doing history on that, and came to the conclusion that that's what the framers and the public intended. Reasonable people can disagree on that. It's hard work. Justice Scalia wrote what I think is a fabulous opinion in the Heller case. Justice Stevens wrote a very powerful dissent. The point is, these are tough questions and require our best efforts to get to the answer. So.
Well, and I love those examples, and there's so much nuance in the way that you laid it out, and again, in understanding the Constitution. I would encourage everyone to go and read that brilliant speech that you gave there. But there's something else that I really want to focus our time on that we have today, because it's a piece that you wrote fairly recently. I didn't see it at first, but a good friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, Boyd Matheson, with the Deseret News, shared it with me and helped us make the connection. And there were so many things that I had been working on that fit just perfectly within the framework of what you were discussing. But I want to start here, if I could. So this is an article that you wrote for the Harvard Journal of Law and Policy, and in there you begin, or near the beginning, you quote a professor from NYU, Professor Jonathan Haidt. And I just want to read his quote because it's alarming, and I want to talk about your reasoning for writing this, and maybe the cautionary tale that you are sharing here. So this is in your words, he recently sounded an ominous alarm, and these are his words. There is a very good chance, Professor Haidt warned, that in the next 30 years we will have a catastrophic failure of our democracy. And then you posit the question, the reason for his concern, and quote again, "We just don't know," he observed, what a democracy looks like when you drain all the trust out of the system. Now, in this, you talk a tremendous amount about civility and something called civic charity. But let's start here. He sounds this ominous alarm, very concerned, and you share that concern. Can you tell us more about why you're concerned?
I do. So I'm not a historian. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a pundit. But I am an observer, right? And now I'm an old man, so I have some years to look at. I've been an observer of the American political scene all my life. I'm a product of Washington, D.C. The politics is the air I breathe, for better or for worse. I came of age. I was a young boy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember the Cold War very well. I remember the assassination of President Kennedy and of Dr. King and of Robert Kennedy. Remember the demonstrations that took place nearby my home to protest the war in Vietnam, the riots that occurred after Dr. King's death. I went to school with the sons and daughters of key figures in Watergate. I'm mentioning all those to say that those were all stressful and difficult times for our country. My personal view is what we are going through right now far exceeds any of those in terms of the peril it poses to the Republic. And that's not a view of an outlier. That's a view that many share, that what we are enduring right now, the partisanship, the invective, the contempt that is going on in American political discourse right now is unique, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it undermines the very core of what's required to have a constitution in the first place. So I do. You know, I'm not a naturally pessimistic person. I'd like to think that I'm optimistic and hopeful, and I am, but I'm really alarmed. I've never seen anything quite like what we're going through right now in terms of the type of public discourse, the type of partisanship that it's created.
So let's dive in a little deeper in that. You mentioned contempt, and we can come back around to contempt, but maybe let's start with civility itself and the difference between civility and something that I think a lot of people believe is important. There's some disagreement about that, and we can talk about that in a moment as well. But the difference between civic and what you refer to as civic charity, something that former UVU president Matt Holland, a friend of ours, a mutual friend, has written about as well. Can you talk more about that distinction and why it's important?
Yeah, be happy to. So I'm borrowing the idea from Arthur Brooks, who I, conservative thinker, former head of the American Enterprise Institute, who says it in a very humorous way. He says, if I were to tell you that my wife and I were civil to one another, your response would be, get counseling, right? Now, civility is a good start, but it's got to be deeper than that. And I think Matt Holland provides the insight here. And so I'm going to plug his book. Here it is. It's an awesome Bonds of Affection, Civic Charity and the Making of America, Winthrop, Jefferson, and Lincoln. And what Matt does in this book is he traces the idea of this concept called civic charity from the Puritans right on through to Lincoln, and identifies key moments in the nation's history, key times of stress, where our national leaders have called upon this idea of civic charity. I mean, the best expression of it is in Lincoln's inaugural address, where he talks about the bonds of affection. That's the title of the book. That there are bonds of affection that unite us as a people that have to be present for the enterprise to succeed. And what I worry about today is that those bonds of affection are frayed and maybe coming apart. Perhaps they can't be sewn up together again. I hope that's not the case. When one looks at the framing of the Constitution in the summer of 1787, the miracle of Philadelphia, and it really was a miraculous event that took place. Historians who've studied this carefully tell us that the convention wasn't going well, right? In July of 1787, there were members of the Constitutional Convention who were getting ready to pack it in. It wasn't going to work. Some were threatening to go home. And yet 6 or 7 weeks later, it succeeded. They had pulled it off. In the letter that George Washington wrote to the Continental Congress, transmitting the Constitution, the successful Constitution, he wrote this. I'll quote him. The Constitution is the result of the spirit of amity and mutual deference, which the peculiarity of our political situation rendered indispensable. the spirit of amity and mutual deference, which was required to succeed. This Constitution, this country, was born in the spirit of amity and mutual deference. Professor Akhil Amar at Yale Law School, one of the leading students of the Constitution, writes, and I think he's right, that the most fundamental liberty that the Constitution protects is the liberty of the majority, of we the people, to set the rules by which the country will be run. I think that's absolutely right. The Constitution sets up a structure of government in which we the people make the rules. Not a king, not a religious leader, not the aristocracy. We the people through the politically accountable representatives. I want to add to what Professor Amar says another idea, that the most fundamental impulse that created the Constitution was a yearning for unity, a yearning for union. They wanted to create a union. And to me, the most remarkable moment of that miraculous summer of 1787 is when the delegates to the Constitutional Convention decided that they were going to create a union, they were going to create a compromise before they knew what the terms of the compromise were. We all know that the convention was foundering on the idea of how do you represent the states, how do you represent the people, and the result was the great compromise that we have now, where you have a House of Representatives and the Senate. But before they reached the terms of that compromise, they decided that they were going to reach a compromise. That's remarkable. Why did they do that? Because they were committed to the idea of unity. Unity was critical to them. And so they created a committee of 11 moderates. I know that's not a fashionable word anymore, but it was 11 moderates who met at the home of Benjamin Franklin, who hammered out the compromise that saved the convention, that created the Constitution. So the idea I want to offer is the Constitution cannot succeed unless the citizens of the United States of America are committed to the idea that we're going to make a go of this together. Yep. Donald Trump supporters, you're going to look at Bernie Sanders supporters and you're going to say, you know, I disagree with just about everything you're for. But you know what? We're in this together. We're going to create a committee, and vice versa. Bernie Sanders supporters are going to look at their friends with the MAGA hats, and they're going to say, you know, I don't like a lot of your policies, and I don't like the way you talk. But guess what? We're fellow citizens, as Lincoln said. We cannot be enemies. We have to be friends. We must not be enemies. That is hard work to do, and we have a long way to go there. But if you want to defend, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. You've taken the same oath. Members of the military take the oath. Anyone who holds an office in the United States or the state of Utah takes an oath to defend the Constitution. What I want to offer for an idea is, when you take that oath, you're taking an oath to be an agent of reconciliation, not an agent of division. That's the idea of civic charity.
I'm almost speechless, Judge, because the way you framed that it's powerful, it's brilliant. The concept of, and I've studied, I read Miracle at Philadelphia, I've studied the Constitution in college and in law school, but I've never heard it put that way, that they agreed that they would come to a result before they knew what the result was. And the power in that decision, that civic charity, the decision that they were going to be unified regardless. I'm reminded, and I don't have this written down, but in the other speech that I referenced that you gave at BYU, you quoted Judge Learned Hand about the spirit of liberty. We talk a lot today about patriotism and freedom and the founding fathers and the oath that you said to swear to defend the Constitution. And in our minds, those are almost divisive things that we're going to. We think of a battle, right? That we're going to defend. That speaks to war, and certainly those things are real, and that is part of the oath that we take. But Judge Learned Hand said the spirit of liberty was something a little different. That and you can probably quote it off your head. Maybe I don't mean to put you on the spot, but go ahead and paraphrase it, and I'll see if I can find it.
So Judge Hand is probably the greatest judge who never served on the Supreme Court, right? A remarkable figure, Judge Learned Hand. And in the 1930s, he gave this speech called The Spirit of Liberty, which is part of, the secular canon, our secular scripture for America. And he said, the spirit of liberty is the spirit that is not too sure that it's right? It has this healthy dose of humility. And then Judge Hand calls upon the quote from the Puritan revolutionary Oliver Cromwell, right, who says to his men, I beseech ye in the bowels of Christ, think that ye might be mistaken. And then Judge Hand says he would like to have that quote put over every schoolhouse, every legislature, every church, every place in America. Be humble. You might not be right. Okay, but let's assume you think you are right. You've played the humility card and you think you are right. Certainly you wouldn't have views that you think are wrong. What do you do then? Civic charity says you treat other views respectfully. First of all, you learn the other views, right? You listen to your opponents and try and really understand what they're saying. And you're not going to get that being in an echo chamber. I'm sorry, my fellow political conservatives, you're not going to learn what political progressives think by listening just to Fox News, right? That's not where you're going to get it. And my progressive friends, you're not going to learn what political conservatives think by just listening to MSNBC. It fits for all of us. We need to learn what our fellow citizens think, why they think that way, and we need to treat it with respect. We don't need to agree with them. Oh my goodness, that would be boring. The Constitution is built for vigorous disagreement, but it cannot withstand contempt. It cannot withstand us viewing a fellow citizen with contempt. And that's the problem that has seeped into our system right now, the contempt. And there's lots of social science data that shows this. Some surveys have shown that Democrats think so ill of Republicans and vice versa. Republicans think so ill of Democrats that they don't trust them at all. And it's the level of distrust is at the same level that Israelis have for Palestinians. That's what's going on in our political discourse, right? And that has to stop. We have to root that out. The Constitution will not survive. It won't survive with this level of contempt. It has to be addressed and has to be rooted out. So we need to find at our individual levels how to do that. How do I become a person that is more respectful of even of views that I disagree with? There's a good reason to do this as well, right? There's a good reason to do this as well. There's a moral reason to do it, right? We ought to treat people kindly, even if they disagree with us. But there's another reason to do this as well. Democracy is built on the idea that you win arguments by persuasion. You don't win arguments by brute force. That's other systems of government do that. We rejected that, right? Our system of government is that you win arguments, you win elections by persuasion. Well, as a practical matter, you're not going to persuade somebody if you hold them in contempt. Just can't be done. You can't hate a person into agreeing with you. It's just not going to be done. The only way that can happen is to treat one another respectfully.
I have so many more questions, but I know our time is running short. So maybe I'll conclude here. You've already talked about some of the practical things that people can do. Turning off cable news, getting outside of our echo chambers, listening more, learning what other people think, getting proximate to people, eliminating contempt from our life. Arthur Brooks talks a lot about contempt in his book about loving our enemies. So maybe let's conclude here. There are some, and I've certainly heard it. We tried to make civility a big part of our campaign, both in the primaries and in the general election, trying to change the nature of politics. And there are those that have criticized. Certainly, we've seen this year. We've seen civil unrest this year. You mentioned that previously. Some have argued that civility is an impediment to social progress. It's an impediment to conservative progress. For those whose voices maybe have traditionally not been heard, sometimes the call for civility can be seen as a way to quiet those voices. Let's conclude here with your thoughts on what civility and again civil charity really means. You've already said it. It doesn't mean we all agree, but how do you differentiate civility and civil disobedience and that idea that we do need to come together even if we disagree?
Well, you're right. The criticism is well founded. If the purpose of civility is to tell people, stay in your place, right? Stay in your place. And this was a common theme that was invoked by segregationists in the 1950s. You need to be civil here, which means, calm down, stay in your place. That's not the type of civility I'm talking about. I'm talking about passionate disagreement. I'm talking about a passionate sense of justice. But what I'm suggesting is the way we go about making those arguments matters enormously. It's not, and this is an Arthur Brooks idea, it's not that we stop disagreeing, it's just that we disagree better, right? And that we have respect for the person with whom we disagree. We listen to them, we try and understand, and then we disagree with them and we try and shoot down their argument. But we never do so out of contempt for the person we're speaking with. Now, this is a devotional. This is a non-denominational devotional. I get it. But to me, the grandest expression of this idea comes from C.S. Lewis in the greatest sermon that he gave, I think, The Weight of Glory, where he says, and he's speaking in a Christian idiom, he says, next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. Civic charity says that when you're arguing with somebody, you recognize that that person you're arguing with is somebody of value, is somebody of worth. You don't have to agree with them, but you need to respect them enough to take their argument seriously, to understand it, and then to rebut it, and then to refute it, but not to dismiss it out of hand because you hold them in contempt. The message, Governor-elect, that I'm trying to offer is that all of us want to defend the Constitution. We love the Constitution of the United States. Many of us see in the Constitution of the United States the hand of providence reaching in and helping this country and other countries understand the value of human dignity, the flourishing that can come when we have a limited role for government and a maximum role for liberty. We see that. What I'm offering is that the greatest defense to the Constitution that we can offer at this time is civic charity, because the Constitution will not work. It will not work when the citizenry holds itself in contempt for one another. You want to defend the Constitution, we all do. Defend the Constitution by being respectful for those with different viewpoints that you have. Try and win at the ballot box. Try and win by argument. You're going to win sometimes, you're going to lose sometimes. And when you lose sometimes, sorry, you lost. So pick it up again. You got another election 2 years ahead or 4 years ahead. Try and do a better job next time. But whatever you do, you don't treat your opponents as enemies. You treat them as friends.
Judge, you've been inspirational. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your devotion to the courts, your devotion to law and order in our land, and especially now in retirement, your devotion to making our country a better place. We started in an alarming place, in a little bit of a pessimistic place. Maybe we could end with any optimism that you see, and especially in the state of Utah, for those ideals that you've just laid out, maybe a hopeful place as we move forward over the next 4 years.
Yeah, no. So look, think of the emblem of the state of Utah. What is it? It's a beehive, right? What does that tell us? Utah has a long tradition of building community, right? Utahns know how to build community. I'm not a Utahn, but I admire what Utah has done in building community. And so there are resources at play in the tradition of the state of Utah and the people of the state of Utah, of people of all faiths and no faith at all, to come together and build community. I started off in a negative place. I'll end with this positive place. I think what you and Chris Peterson did in your ads, which were so well received, I think that points a way for all of us, And I'd like to believe that because of Utah values, because of Utah's emphasis on community, that Utah really could be a leader in the nation to show us how to make the Constitution work. That it's a document for vigorous disagreement. It's not a document for contempt. So I'm very optimistic by leaders like you and others around the nation who capture this vision. It's going to happen locally. It's going to happen on the state and local level. But as a political conservative, I think that's where it should happen. And so blessings to you. Congratulations on your victory. May God bless you and the state of Utah and all its citizens.
Judge, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor to be with you tonight. God bless you and your family. We wish you that you're safe from this virus, and that you have an incredible 2021. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to continue reading from the programs. Next will be a musical number, Panis Angelicos, which means Bread of the Angels, written by St. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. Will be performed by celloist Dr. Kawai Yu from Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church, pianist Dr. Nancy Allred, and soprano Rachel Cox, both from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, followed by Governor-elect Spencer J. Cox closing comments and the closing prayer from Professor Shadman Bashir, the Islam faith representative to St. George Interfaith Council and a professor for the international students at Dixie State University.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a distinct honor and privilege to be with you here tonight. I want to thank all of those who have helped to make this such a special evening, especially Rabbi Ainbinder. Thank you so much for hosting us tonight, to the St. George Interfaith Council, all the members, thank you. This is such an incredible opportunity for us to be here with you and to share with the rest of the state the incredible work that you're doing here together. I'm so grateful for the music that has been shared. I worship and feel most through music, and you have touched us tonight. I think it's one of the things that we've missed so much about the pandemic is live music and how it enriches the soul. And so thank you for that beautiful music. Juan Felipe, gracias por compartir su regalo de música con nosotros. And I want to thank our speakers tonight too. Elder Schmutz, thank you for your words. Lieutenant Governor-elect Henderson, thank you. And you will be relieved to hear that I'm going to be extremely brief tonight. I know that's rare, especially for politicians, but I promise I will be brief. You'll hear more from me tomorrow. But you will notice, if you've paid attention tonight, that there is a theme. And what I want you to know is that that was entirely accidental if you believe in accidents. And if you don't, then it was inspired, but it was not something that we strategized towards. None of us had any idea what Elder Schmutz was going to talk about. I actually had not talked to Lieutenant Governor Henderson, nor had I seen or heard any of her speech. I only knew that I would be interviewing Judge Griffith, and I did choose that topic, and I chose him very distinctly because of the things that you heard and how much they mean to me and how much I feel this in our country right now, that we are in trouble. And it's going to take all of us in our own lives to change the direction we are headed. I'm grateful for the words of wisdom that have been shared tonight, and I hope to add to that in my own small way tomorrow at our inauguration and during my inaugural address. But let me just conclude with this. Today has been a special day for us, a day that Abby and I will remember forever. And I know that Lieutenant Governor-elect Henderson and Gabe and their family feel the same. You see, we have spent the day in fasting and faith and prayer, visiting different congregations, very different than our own here in Washington County. We went to 4 different congregations, and in all of them, we heard messages of unity, message of peace, message of love, messages of hope as we start this new year after what has been a very dark and dreadful and dreary 2020. But we also heard stories and felt the love and the lessons that have been learned through those dark times, for it is in the worst of times that we learn the most important of lessons, and I believe that has happened here in our own personal lives. It's happened in our state. Hopefully it's happened in our country and across the world. But what I have found here in St. George, and I like to say, I've shared this many times, that when God created Utah, he was showing off a little bit. And certainly nowhere is that more true than right here with these red rock vistas, the gorgeous weather that attracts so many people from Utah and across the world to come here. We're so excited to have our inauguration here and to share this experience with you. And it's not all of those things that I just mentioned that brought us here and bring us back time and time again. It's the people that you've seen here tonight, that you've heard from tonight, both in song and spoken word. It's the love, that neighborly love, and yes, even some of our enemies who I'm sure will be protesting tomorrow, that love that we feel from the people here that brings us back. And that's what makes Utah such a special place. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, for we all are all brothers and sisters, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for the great things that you're going to do this year. Thank you for your patience with us and with all your elected leaders. We live in a special place, and this is going to be a special year. May God bless you in all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be even briefer than the governor-elect. I'm a professor, so I love to talk, but my goal today is to be as brief as possible. I share a quote with Mr. Tim Martin that there is no mic which Shadman and I do not like. And that's it's not going to happen today, so I wanted to make sure I don't go off script, but I have to say that sometimes when, from the north, when people call me, they say, is there enough Muslim community in southern Utah? I was like, there are a few homes over here, but this is all my community, because these are the people who have accepted us, and that's why we are in love with Utah. So I'm going to go back on the script to make sure that I go quick. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be invited to speak at this event in this historical house of worship. And I want to thank everyone involved in making this happen. My name is Shadman Bashir. I am the director of the International Student Office at Dixie State University, and I'm also privileged to be a professor at Dixie, which is nearby. I was born and raised in northwestern Pakistan in a small village, a very tiny village, in a small town called Banu. I've lived in US for 20 years. I became a US citizen here in St. George a year and a half ago, and I'm in love with Utah. And I keep on repeating it. I keep on reminding my wife that, yes, I love you, but I'm in love with Utah as well, especially southern Utah, because this is where I found my home. This is where we were accepted into this community. This is where my children were born. So I'm honored, I'm privileged, and I'm happy to be here. Again, since I told you I went off script, so I was going to talk about something, so I'm just going to go through that quickly. I'm a Muslim, or in other words, I'm a follower of the Muslim faith, which means that it's my sacred duty to respect and love every faith and religion. Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, is my prophet. Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, is my prophet. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is my prophet. This is what I have been taught, and this is what I teach. We go to different places of worship, and we call God by different names. Why do we do that? I do not know. But all of us know one fact, that piety and righteousness is universal. Chapter 49, verse 13 of the Holy Scripture in Quran, it says, O humankind, we have made you into nations and tribes so that you may get to know one another. The noblest of you in God's sight is the one who is the most righteous. Instead of searching for differences, we need to try to learn about similarities with others. Different cannot always equal to wrong. It's just different. We are a species of storytellers. This is why we have moved ahead and left all other life forms in the dust. We can share what we learn. Sometimes we are given chances to help write our stories. Before any decision in our respective stories, we need to ask ourselves, is this a decision which I one day will share with my children, and will they share it with their children? This may sometimes feel like trying to eat soup with a knife, but we need to remember that. We do not become good people by claiming to be such. We can become great people by giving honor, respect, and dignity to others, especially those in need. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in his last sermon, all humans are descendants of Adam and Eve. There is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, or a non-Arab over an Arab, of a white person over a black person, or of a black person over a white person. In God's eyes, someone up on a higher pedestal is because of their piety and righteousness. Honorable Governor-elect Cox and Lieutenant Governor-elect Henderson, all the best for the start of a new story in your lives. May all your decisions help make lives better for the citizens of Utah and beyond. We wish you Godspeed. I'll end with a quote. I laugh when I hear that fish in the water is thirsty. I laugh when I hear that men go on pilgrimage to find God. Thank you.
Tonight's welcome and invocation for Governor-elect Spencer Cox, and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. So we wish their administration well with many blessings. And I also want to say thank you to my secretary, Tim Martin, from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and my vice president, Carol Drake, from the Catholic Church here in St. George. And hopefully everybody will be feeling good and have light come into their lives, and hope for the new year to be a better year for everybody.